All right, so the first thing that you'll notice about Studio Max is its total Byzantine interface, right? By which I mean it's complicated and difficult to understand. It's not like what you're used to. Again, I assume all of us have got experience with Rhino. Rhino has like the command line, you know, that's on the bottom. It has the menus. It has icons, but not in the way that you're seeing right now. This is pretty like complicated. Okay, so that's going to take a little bit of getting used to. But the first thing that I want you guys to do just to get acclimated to the software is, and you should be in this by default, but if you're not, there are all these tabs up here. Make sure you're on the Create tab, and I think you are. And that your geometry is selected, which I think it is, and then standard primitives, and then select box. Okay, and then click and drag a box. Now, so watch this first. I'm gonna click and drag, and that's gonna make the base of it. And then when I let go, it's gonna let me make the height of it. Okay, and that's all you need to do. Just practice that. If that doesn't work for you, let me know. But I just wanted to get you guys a sense of, so already the way you make form is kind of interactive, right? Like you can actually see what you're getting as you're getting it, okay? You can also make objects explicitly. Well, first of all, we made an object. We can, at this point, we can actually go into the side column here, and we can actually type in, these are just units. We can actually type in explicitly what units we want. So it's like you can kind of fudge it, and then you can type something in if you want. Okay. This doesn't work if you've stopped creating the object. Like as soon as you click on something else, you're out of this mode. You're going to make another object. Okay.
Can you get back to that mode?
We can, but I'll talk about that later. Yeah. If you're out of the mode, just go ahead and pick your object and press delete, and that'll like remove the object that you made. Okay. So you do it with the box. And so this is kind of neat though, right? I mean, in Rhino, you kind of get the wireframe of the thing, but there isn't really a sense of like the kind of substance of what you're creating. Like here, it's very fluid. Like it's already more like sculpting kind of than I think what we're used to with like Rhinoceros. I mean, even with the box tool in Rhino, I don't think it's like quite this nice. Okay. And we can go through these other primitives if you like. I see some of you guys doing this. Go ahead and go into the menu. You can make a cone or something. Again, you kind of click and hold, you let go, and then you move again, and then when you click, it lets you create the cone point. See, and everything's all shaded and like fluid, you know. Yeah, and if you've got the right mode on, it'll actually create shadows in the viewport. But we'll talk about that in a second. So there's the teapot. This is kind of a strange throwback. The teapot, it's actually a parametric teapot. This was because teapots used to be important as a tool for testing rendering, because a teapot contains like flat surfaces, curved surfaces, double curvature, etc. And so it's kind of in there as sort of like a homage. It doesn't. I don't know why you would ever need a teapot in your design, unless you're making a teapot factory or something. I don't want to know you. Okay, so there's these are basic primitive tools, and you can kind of get to know them. They have different, some of them are more parametric settings. You know, you can change the inner radius or the outer radius or the height. So it's really, you get a lot of, you know, like dynamic like control. Okay, and again, with polygonal modeling, a lot of the times you start with like a base object, which you're then going to modify into what you like want. Okay. Let's go ahead and erase everything except for like one object, like just so you can give yourself an object or you know whatever you like. But okay, we all there? We got one object. So now I'm going to talk about, now that we've kind of just seen the basic kind of like creation thing, right? Now I'm going to talk about the viewport, right? As you guys know, when you're modeling in Rhino, you're constantly spending time like changing your perspective, kind of, you know, like zooming around the object. You want to orient yourself to what you're seeing. Okay. So the basic controls, as you guys know, right, are pan, zoom, and orbit. Okay. So pan is a lot like AutoCAD in that it's the middle mouse button. So if you do like middle mouse, you can pan. Okay. Zoom is the wheel. No different. Orbit is this little orbity deal on the bottom corner here, the second to last icon. There's a hotkey for it, but it escapes me at the moment. But it's up or what or alt? Alt ball. Okay. Well, that's a little bit different. That's like a light thing. It creates a different.
Oh.
Yeah. Just for now, let's just do the orbit key. Okay, so we can orbit, and the orbit works. So this is the see how it's like a white icon. It's hard to tell on my screen, but on yours you probably got a better view. If you hold down the mouse on this, you can go in and there's different types of orbit. And what we usually want is orbit selected. It's this kind of green one. That way, when you pick something, and this is the select button here, select, that's very useful, right? So we're going to select something. You will orbit around that selected object and nothing else. Usually we want to focus on something, right? And we're always going to zoom and pan in relation to that object. So changing this to orbit selected is really useful. You can do zoom selected. You know, there's a lot of these things are just basically duplicates of what you get in Rhino. Okay, but those are the ones that I find most useful. Okay, so pan, zoom, orbit selected, zoom selected. Okay, maybe any questions about that stuff? Pretty common stuff. You've got this kind of gimbal here, you notice, when you're in orbit. This is useful if you want to take a particular view and you want to twist it orthographically. So if you mouse over, you can sort of only kind of twist it in a 90-degree angle, or you can basically rotate it about that. It's sort of like a rotation constraint. You guys probably saw this inside of like AutoCAD. Sometimes it's useful. Okay. The other thing that we got out of Rhino that's really useful are different cameras, right? We have orthographic cameras. We have the top view, back view, right view, left view. And Max, these are actually, so there's no command line in Studio Max, okay, which can be kind of a problem. But what's nice about Max is that there are hotkeys. So instead of typing in top for top view, I can press T, and I get top view. Okay? R actually doesn't give me the right view. So T, what's that?
L works.
L works. Can't remember what right is supposed to be. So you can do hotkeys. Oh, stop, Holly. Okay, so there's some hotkeys that we can look up. The other thing you can do is if you right-click, and this is very similar to Rhino, you can right-click the views here. Looks like.
Don't have one for right.
What's that?
They don't have one for right.
Yeah, they don't have a hotkey for right. You can probably map one to it in the settings, but anyway, that's beside the point. So you can change your view here. Perspective view is the one we like because it gives us a kind of architectural perspective. But orthographic views are also our bread and butter. So top view, front view. F is useful. And again, this is all pretty standard. You have like the kind of coordinate plane. Okay. The other thing that we have that's useful is multiple cameras. If you go down to the very far bottom right, you click on that icon, and that gives you the 4-view mode, which I think you're probably used to. And now you can set up cameras as different views. So I can have top view, front view, left view, and then I can make this my perspective view. And of course, if I do something to an object in one viewport, it gets done to objects in all the viewports at the same time. So not too different from Rhino, right? And then in order to go back to 3 views, you could just do the toggle again. So that gives me an opportunity. Actually, before I move on, is anybody any questions about that? Has everybody kind of got that? We can kind of navigate the way you want to. There's more to play with. You can do orthographic views that are more like axonometric, things like that. But that ought to be the gist of it, right? Everybody okay? All right. So now there's different view types. Again, like Rhino, right? We have the default shaded view. You could do a view that's got edged faces. So this is where we actually see the kind of polygons of the form. Okay. We turn on edge, shaded and edge. These are all toggles, actually. Okay. This is what I want you guys to notice about polygons. So look at that form right now. Okay, this is the difference between polygons and NURBS. One of the big difference. If you look at the teapot spout, it's not nice and rounded like you'd expect it to be, right? It's kind of like facety. It's kind of like Tron, right? Look at the teapot itself, especially the actual pot like body, whatever you want to call it. Again, not very like rounded, right? It just has these polygon kind of facets. It's like it's like was like carved by a stonemason or something. I don't know what the right analogy is. It's made out of crystal. Okay. This is an important lesson. So I've got the teapot. If you go in, I'm going to modify it so I can just click on this little modifier thing here. This gives us the piece here. So you can see there's these settings for like segments. Okay. Check this out. If I add more segments to the form, the more segments that you get, the smoother the form gets, right? The more information that I like add to it. Okay? It's still faceted. Like if I zoom way in, what used to be maybe a 15-degree angle or a 5-degree angle, let's say, right, is now like a sub 1-degree angle, okay? And far enough away, it looks like it's pretty much rounded, okay? This is the trick that Rhino plays on us like all the time. No matter what view you're looking at something or no matter what state it's in, it gives you enough like facets to make it appear as though it's perfectly smooth, when actually it's always made out of polygons, okay? And why this is important is gonna matter like later in the day, but I just want to use this as an object lesson. I actually see a lot of you guys playing with spheres, and that's another really good thing to look at. Because a sphere is completely, curves, right? It's round. So if we look at a sphere, we can go in the opposite direction. Like the fewer facets. Hang on a minute. The fewer facets that the sphere has, it changes. So actually, I could start with a sphere, but then I can really, if I really start to reduce it, what happens to it? Look at, now it becomes kind of like almost kind of like a polyhedral form. If I keep reducing that number, now it becomes even more like kind of a diamond. It becomes kind of like a dreidel at that point there. Until it becomes a little Sims, diamond. Okay, and that is a sphere. And I think I mentioned this, but I want to mention this explicitly now. That's parametric. Like every time you make a form in Studio Max, it's parametric. It's always parametric. Like you don't need a plugin. You don't need Revit. Like this predates Revit by quite a bit, right? There's information in this thing that's like built into it, like to modify that form. Does anybody know, this is going to be reaching here, why would everything be parametric in Studio Max? Like what's Studio Max used for? Animations, right? So it's everything's parametric because in animations things are parametric, right? You have something at one frame that changes and then you have it in another frame, right? You actually it needs that ability because it's always going to be it's assumed to be animated at some point. That was the way 3D Max was designed, okay? And we can exploit that when we're modeling. We'll talk about this in a bit, okay? Okay. So just so that's kind of a quick kind of overview of so what I wanted to talk about actually before I got too carried away here. I'm going to go ahead and throw down a plane object as well. So the different view types. Give me 1 second here. Oh, didn't need to do that. So we were looking at the kind of shaded view, the kind of edged faces view. You can change this to like realistic, and depending upon the light sources, it might give you some shadows. There's different views. There's a faceted view, and it'll give you the kind of faceted edges. You can look at it as if it was a drawing, like a hidden line view. You can just do bounding boxes. So there's lots of different view types. I don't know why there's a clay view. That's really weird. All right. But For today, shaded with edged faces is probably fine. Okay. Okay. So that's the basic. We went through the basic kind of views. The next part I want to talk about are transforms. Does anybody remember what transforms are? A little bit of review here. There are 3 transforms. What are they? Amber, you got to know this. You just came out of comp methods.
Rotate, move, and scale.
Woo! 100 points. Yes, yes, yes. Move, rotate, and scale. And they're always the transforms, no matter if you're using Rhinoceros or if you're a computer scientist or like whatever, right? This is how we like move geometry around and how we make geometry more or less complicated, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make some boxes here to talk about transforms. So the transforms are actually up. So this is the select key. You've got move, you've got rotate, and you've got scale. Okay, right there. There are your transforms. Okay, let's go ahead and start off with move. So when you click on move, you get this this little what they call a transform gizmo, and that's a technical term. Gizmo. Okay, and you guys have, some of you have used Rhino 5, right? Show of hands, who's used Rhino 5? Okay, so Rhino 5, like this is actually something that you didn't find in Rhino 4, but you do find in Rhino 5 because it's very useful. Okay, remember when you had to move stuff in Rhino, you used to have to like type in like where it was and where you wanted it to be, or you click here, you click there, like that's the way you do it. The gizmo is this kind of is like a manual way. It says move. I can mouse over this, and you can see like when I mouse over the X here, it turns yellow. When I mouse over the Y, it turns yellow. I mouse over the Z, I'm moving it in the Z, or I'm moving it only in the X. Or if I mouse over the bottom here, let me turn this around a little bit. If I mouse over here, I'm moving it in the XY plane, or I'm moving it in the ZY plane. It restricts the movement to that plane, okay? So I don't need like 6 commands. I don't need to like type stuff in. I have a gizmo, okay? So that's how move operates. Why don't you guys give yourself a second, move something with the gizmo. Get a sense of like when it's constrained and when it's not constrained. So, or when you're constraining it to 2 planes versus when you're constraining it to 1 plane, okay? Another thing you can do, guys, if you got your 4 view, it's very easy because when you're looking at one side of the gizmo, you only get the 2 planes that you can move it in. So if I'm looking at it in the front view, I only get the Y plane and the X plane. If I'm looking at it in the top view, I only get I get the local Y and the local X in this plane. Okay, pretty slick. So make 2 objects and try putting one on top of the other using the gizmo. Okay? That's your little pseudo homework here in class here. So basically using multiple views. I mean, I think you guys think you guys know how to do this anyway, but in Studio Max, make it so that you can, you've got one object on top of the other. It's hard, right? Because in the computer, there's no physics, so you don't know whether something's inside of something else or not. You can't do it in perspective. Don't give me all perspective views. You're just kidding yourself. The way to do it right is to use the side views. You can get close in the perspective view. Okay, good. So what is not quite right with this method, right? Is your object sitting exactly on top of the other object? Gil's shaking his head no. Why not, Gil?
I'm not sure.
Oh, come on. You said no.
I just know there's something about it just doesn't feel as accurate.
Right? Your spider sense is tingling, right? It's not quite on top of the object. Well, one way to do it, right, if we would be to use snaps. Unfortunately, we have snaps. Okay, so if you go up to so all of our friends are in this top layer here, this top row. You can go on to snaps here, and if you right-click it, you get access to all the different snaps. We want to turn off the grid point snap and turn on a vertex snap. We want to snap vertices to vertices. Okay, so again, right-click on this little magnet 3 here, and we want to go vertex snaps. Okay, then we can do this in an actual perspective view. And actually, you can get. Hang on a second here. Ugh. It might get kind of annoying. So snaps are S to toggle them off and on, and you want to do that because they can actually get in your way. But check this out. So I've got my snaps turned on. You can see I don't have much screen real estate, so I apologize. But you can see this little cross that appears everywhere there's a vertex, and it appears too on these vertexes here. Okay. Okay. Watch this. The gizmo's lit up in the Z constraint, like it's constrained to the Z axis. Okay. And I'm going to grab the bottom point vertex with my snap, and I'm just going to hold it. And I can actually snap. I can snap that vertex to vertex in 3D. If I want to, here, hang on a minute. I want to turn on my constraints here. Oh, I might be missing those. Yeah, axis. Okay, so here's the thing, guys. This is really useful. So if you right-click this blank area here, you can turn on other command panels. I forgot. You need to turn on axis constraints here. And this actually forces the constraint. So I can say if it's X, Y, or Z, or X, Y. And if I click and hold, oh man, it's not doing what I want it to do. Okay. You should be able to move it in the Z without actually disturbing the X and the Y coordinate. I'm not exactly sure why.
Can we use the face snap?
What's that?
The face snap?
The face? Well, no. There's ways to do it with the align tool. That's where I'm going with this. But I'm trying to hang on a second. Oh, snaps use axis toggle. You need to toggle that thing. Sorry. This interface is a little bit different for me. If you have that turned on, there you go. Okay, so now it's on the bottom, now it's on the top. So if I had the Z-axis constraint and I say that the snaps use the axis toggle, you can snap an object in the perspective viewport to the edge of the object. I'm going to do it, let's say, in the Y-axis now. I'm going to grab this end, and I can snap it to this side or to that side. Okay, so you can actually snap to things when you're not even in the same plane as they are, and that'll actually help you out in 3D. Okay, but you have to have that axis constraints, thing turned on, and you have to have the snap toggle turned on. Is everybody having trouble with that? Does anybody need me to?
Where is the axis constraint?
You have to right click up here, and then you have to toggle it on. It's the third one. Then and then you have to make sure that this is highlighted. The button here. Snaps use axis constraints. Okay. Then you can grab a vertex that's on an edge, and you can snap it to another object in three-dimensional space. I'll sort of come around to you guys. It's very useful because, again, we're going to be sculpting, and I actually do like working at the perspective viewport, but we do need a little bit of precision, so that's why it's nice to have this constraints thing kind of figured out. Okay.
You're saying so we can reference different points?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to put that ball on top of that box, exactly, you need its bottom vertice to be equal to the top vertice of the other one, right? And how do you do that if there's no vertice in the middle of that box? You need to reference another point. I think we did this in Rhino. It's a pretty common thing. I mean, you're just kind of borrowing that vertice. And again, you can kind of manually toggle the axis you want. So if you know you're only moving it in the height, or you can do it in one view and then do it in another view to make sure you get it right. It takes a little bit of practice. It's not that critical at this stage. But precision's always good for architects, right? Okay. Let's put a pin in that. And I want to show you something else here. Okay. So we've got snaps, and we can change the snaps, and we've got axis constraints kind of mapped out. What should be bothering us, right, as architects, again, is that we can't necessarily precisely like move something, right? Like this is really kind of fishy. It's like, oh, and snaps are great, but what if we want to move something a certain amount? Or what if we want to put something in a specific coordinate location? Okay, there's no command line again. So to do that, you just right-click on a transform, and you get the transform type in, blatantly named. Okay. And so now what you can do is I can say like, okay, it's at location, this is the coordinate location. Maybe I want to make that exactly 90. Make that 250, 245 or something like that. So I can precisely do that. Or if I want to offset it, I want to move it, let's say 100 in the X, I can do that. Okay, it's all a type in.
What are the units?
The units right now are unitless.
Okay.
We'll play with that in a bit. I am unconcerned with when we're doing this kind of schematic, like push play kind of thing. Like I'm not worried about units yet.
Right.
Units you can do if you go to customize unit setup. You can change the unit setup to what you're used to in architecture, but I don't. Usually I don't build anything, so it doesn't bother me. If you go to customize, you go to unit setup, and that gives you the. Oh, you just do a right click on the transform for move. Okay. Okay, so we got that. Now the other transforms. I think we might not get a break here for a bit. We got to get through some stuff. Okay, the other piece. I'm going to make a new object, as a matter of fact, just so that I can play with it. Okay, so I got a box. Okay, the next transform is rotate, and the rotate has a gizmo too, and you can see that there's actually rotational axes. There's the z-axis, and y-axis. And z, and that, again, that's the axis of rotation. So it's what it's rotating around. So the one that we most associate with, rotation is the z-axis, right? We're going to spin a record, spin a plate, spin a basketball. They're going to be around a z-axis. But of course, we do. If we're going to look at something in another view, we might want to rotate something, this way. Okay. So rotation gizmo. Okay. Rotation has a type in. If you right-click, same deal. So if I want to make that box rotate at 90 degrees in the z-axis, I can type in 90. If I want to rotate it 45 degrees in this axis, I can do that. So you get very precise with what that object's transforms are. Offset works the same way. Give you guys a second here. And there's not much to that. The only difference is, what if you want to rotate something not around its center? What if you want to rotate it around the edge of the box, right? That would make some sense. You could go into Hierarchy tab and say Effect Pivot, and then you can transform the pivot, and you can actually snap it to things. If you go Pivot, Snap, Vertex, I'm going to say maybe midpoint. So now I can actually snap that to the midpoint of this, and then when I'm done with affecting the pivot, I toggle it, and now I can rotate from the pivot. And I can move that pivot to the moon and back. I can put it anywhere I want, and I can rotate that object around that new pivot. Okay? You're like, Nick, you broke the pivot. Like, what if I want to go back to the center pivot? You go back and you say Effect Pivot, and you just say Center to Object, and then you're back to the way it was. Okay? I'll go ahead and repeat those steps if you guys are interested. So again, the idea is you go into Hierarchy tab, go to Effect Pivot, move that pivot, and then you untoggle it, and then your rotation is now around that new pivot. To reset, say Effect Pivot, Center Object, and then you untoggle Effect Pivot. You probably won't need that, but it might be useful to you next week. Okay, but that's rotate. Any questions about like that? Does that seem to make sense? Okay. It's a little strange. I know, like it's different than Rhino, but again, some things are much easier to work with. Okay, the last one, I know you guys all know, is scale. Okay, so if you click on scale, scale works a little bit differently because sometimes you want to scale in one axis, so I can scale, just in the X. I can scale all at once if I'm in the center cluster. I can scale in two axes if I'm on that little side thing. Very useful. So you get your uniform scale and your non-uniform scale tool all in the same gizmo. Pretty cool, I think. Again, you just turned 6 tools in Rhino into one gizmo. Okay. Gizmo. Okay. So that, and then there's also, if you want to, you can go in and you can, there's like non-uniform scale, there's a stretch and squash scale, so it's like a taffy scale, and that if you just click on this, you can change your like scale type. Okay. Experiment with that. You don't need to. I don't expect you guys, like I'm like spraying you with information here from a fire hose. I don't expect you guys to pick up all of it right now. What I do want you guys, though, is to have it in your memory that you did see this at one point, and to know that you can go back and you can find it in the video, or you can ask me, what was that thing that I saw? Okay? We only have 3 hours a week, and we only have so many weeks in the year, and so I have to cover quite a bit in each session, but that's okay. I'm not going to pile it on in terms of the assignment. And the assignment is a good opportunity. It's going to give you a chance to ask yourself, when would I use this? Well, the forms I showed you are a really good opportunity for some of these things. And we'll get to that in a second. I want to take a quick 5-minute break so we can get warm. Okay? That's a hard 5, so let's come back at 10 till. Okay? If you guys have questions, I'll be right here if you want to ask me some stuff.